Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live event with Julia Starr today and myself. The psychology behind confidence, clarity, and a value-driven career. Welcome to you from wherever you join, whether you join from Europe, which would be the end of your working day right now. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a refreshing lemonade ready to go. Whether you join from the US, which also is summertime, or maybe some of you night owls are out up in Australia as well, which I almost hope you are not. I'm really, really excited about today's event. I hope that you also join us with some questions. There is some time at the end to ask questions. I'm really looking forward and curious what people want to know about. And before I have Julia Starr join us, I'll just quickly introduce myself. To those people that might not have heard from me before, so I do English training for academics, researchers, and writers, which is on knowledge workers in general, as I like to say, because this might be a bit of a wider field. I offer one-on-one language training and also workshops. And I help those people that feel really like experts in their field and they feel confident when they do their research, when they talk about it in their native tongue. But as soon as it comes to English, they might feel a little bit held back, a little bit out of practice, not as confident. They might run out of some words every now and then. And that's where I come in and I help you find your mojo again and to feel confident again with English. I have a master's degree from Oxford University and a master's degree from Harvard University, which is where I met Julia. And now the transition to Julia Starr, my guest today. I'm really excited to have her on board, especially across time zones. Julia is a very successful career and leadership coach, and she has a Master's of Education in Adult Development Psychology. She is specifically, and we will talk about this as one of my first questions, interested and focused on career pivots. So career changes when you're in between careers, different maybe different areas of expertise that you want to focus on, or different strategies that you want to employ. She has coached hundreds of people, so she has lots of experience also working across diverse industries. She offers one-on-one coaching, but also has a group coaching program called Aligned Ambition. And yeah, let's have her join me on the stage. Hi, Julia. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. So good to be here.
I'm really excited. I have so many questions. I think like when we met before today, I have this handy dandy notebook right here. I actually wrote like 3 pages of questions. I said, no, we can't do this. Like no one will actually listen that long. But it is, yeah, it is really, really exciting to have you here.
Mm.
And yeah, let's dive right in. So here we are. So the first question, I kind of introduced you a tiny bit now, but I'm sure you can do this much, much better speaking from your own point of view, your own experiences. Could you tell us a bit about yourself, your work, and how you ended up doing what you do right now?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm also very excited for this conversation and love how our worlds have come back together after meeting at Harvard.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I work as a career and leadership coach, and I had a path that got me here that's really informed so much of my work because I've also pivoted myself. As you mentioned, I work primarily on career pivots. So I started my career in management consulting. So I worked at BCG and really enjoyed that time and space. But when I decided I wanted to leave that industry, I actually worked with a coach myself. So the firm offered me a coach that gave me a lot of insight into how to define success for myself post BCG. And through that process, I not only learned what coaching was, I also defined success in a way that informed how I move forward in my work, my studies, and deciding to be an entrepreneur as well. But it wasn't necessarily like easy. It wasn't like, oh, I have my answer and now I'm just going to sail off into the sunset and do this work. I went back
Yeah.
to school twice. I started coaching people and really learned who I like to coach, what problems I like to coach. And now I've been working for myself for 9 years. And over those years, I've continuously transformed how I work through new information, new experiences, And I think, how did I end up as a successful career and leadership coach? Is I just did it. I got the information, I started practicing, and I really kept incorporating the things that I've learned over time to become hopefully more and more nuanced in the types of people I can work with, and the types of questions that I can kind of hold space for. So it's been a journey, and I am very happy about what I've been able to learn through the process.
Yeah, I think that's partly, this might not be the topic today, but also for me, like as an entrepreneur running your own business, you kind of just need to do it. I feel like I haven't done it
Yeah.
for as long as you have. Like you're almost doing like a 10th year anniversary next year, right? Which is
It'll be 9 years in
fantastic.
August, and then 10 next August. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And also maybe just to clarify for some people that might not come from the US kind of background, so
Mm.
BCG is Boston Consulting Group.
Yes, correct. Yep. Yeah. So one of those kind of like big management consulting firms, like very corporate suit and tie, kind of Excel monkey, business strategy type work, which was wonderful. It was a great kind of boot camp in how to work hard and how to work in that industry. And I actually do
Mhm.
coach many people who have been consultants or are leaving consulting, or tech or finance, or kind of those, typical type A high achievers, especially in the States, kind of career paths. So that also really informs the work that I do and the populations I serve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, you need to start somewhere. And I mean, if anyone has ever heard of Boston Consulting Group, that sounds like a fantastic place to start it,
Mhm.
actually. So yeah. You just mentioned career pivots. So people
Mm.
might remember the pivot scene from Friends, like
Oh,
to
yeah.
change something.
Pivot with
Um,
the couch.
exactly.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, Friends brought me actually through my master's degree at Harvard, to be honest. Like that was part of it. Like when I got home, yeah, just one episode to kind of take a break and then to continue studying. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So talking about career pivots, I think it's fascinating to focus on that, and I have my own kind of thoughts on why that might be something that like someone in your position might focus on. But
Hmm.
asking you directly now, like, why is that point in someone's career so important to you? And like,
Hmm.
as a first part, and then maybe like, what do you focus on when you start working with someone and they kind of just have this maybe sometimes more specific, sometimes less specific idea of change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I mean, at a high level, we spend about a third of our lives working. Like one third of all of our, lived experience on Earth
Yeah.
is working in whatever shape that takes. So, I mean, at a high level, focused on careers and talking to people about the type of work that they do is just an amazing way to have an impact within that person's life. And it consumes so much of our brain space. So I think like having that as a starting point is, um, there's huge room for impact in terms of their experience in
Mhm.
their lives. And career pivots or like a career change, and there's so many different ways to describe this, but it's essentially the moment when you pause and say, do I want to keep doing this work, or is there something
Mhm.
else that I might prefer to do? Whether it's like actually the content of work, maybe you've been working as an engineer and you're like, maybe I want to go and work in sales, or maybe you've been a professor and you're like, maybe I actually want to be a writer and like leave academia, or kind of those moments where you're asking like, what do I want to do when I grow up, like again. And we ask ourselves that many times in our
And
lives.
you grow up a
I
second time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I can say, like, from my experience working with many people who look like they figured it out, we're all asking that question all the time of like, what do I want to do next? Even if someone presents as like, has it figured out? Um, and those moments are such amazing, like, incubators for change and for personal development, really. So it's almost like, I talk about career pivots, and that's why people come to me. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, we end up talking about so much more. Like, and to your question of like, what do you focus on when you start working with a client? Values and strengths, like core
Mhm.
values, like what do you value, how do you define success and like a life well lived. And then strengths are like, what are you, it's kind of like nature and nurture, like what are you naturally gifted at, and then what have you learned to be really good at through your life.
Mhm.
Those two categories are things that don't really change based on where you're working or what you're doing. And so if somebody's feeling really like spun up in this question of like, what do I do next, like how do I define myself and success, etc., we almost have to like get out of that spiral that's like happening right
Mhm.
now and go back to like,
Yeah.
what do you know to be true regardless of career path. And then we can come back from that place and say, okay, what is present and missing? Where are you living in or out of alignment with your values, in or out of alignment with your strengths? And then we can use that as a bit of a template to go forward and chart out different possibilities. But along the way, again, like I love the pivot moment, because like people are open. They're open to questioning things, where a lot of times when we're
Mhm.
kind of doubled down on something, we're like, I don't have the bandwidth to like
Yeah.
really, reflect deeply. Like I've just chosen this, I need to go, which I respect that moment in time. But the pivot's
Mhm.
a very exciting time, because they're kind of willing to be open to, oh, what have I missed, or what is there yet to learn about myself? So it's a really rich moment to get to talk to people at.
Yeah. I can that was kind of my suspicion too. Like when I thought about
Mm,
like when I saw a while ago now that you focus on career pivots, I had the suspicion like that must be such a like for someone to get to that point, and I think you're working with lots of, as you said, high achievers and people like in really, important positions in their career
mhm,
to get to that point and to actually question like I wonder, I'm doing this right now and I've been doing it for a couple of years, but I like, what brings someone to that space and like what kind of decision-making processes need to happen for them to actually successfully find a new, like not to just get frustrated and burn out, but to actually
mhm,
find, which is where you come in,
mhm,
to find a new role that they feel more aligned with, which I think is
mhm,
incredibly precious and
mhm,
valuable.
totally. And can I add one thing there?
Sure.
It's also, I just like to frame it this way of like, it's typically the end of a phase, it's not that what you've been doing has been wrong per se, like it made sense for you during that phase, and then it's the question of like, what do I want to do next? And yes, we look
Mhm.
back to say like what was in or out of alignment, but it's also giving people permission to say like, I don't have to do this forever, and maybe it served a really valuable purpose. And like now, with everything I have from that, I'm not losing that, because people sometimes feel like when they
Mhm.
make a change, they're like giving up on something, or they're like, okay, that was a waste of 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or a whole business or whatever it is. It's like, no,
Yeah.
nothing of that is wasted. It's just saying, what do you want to do from where you are now and what you know
Mhm.
now? So, anyways, I like to offer that, because it's not like a pivot or a change is a failure and you've done something wrong. It's just the question of like, what do I want to do next?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that makes so much sense because you don't
Mm,
that wouldn't feel very great kind of like to feel it to think about it like I've wasted those 10 years now doing this one
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think we could talk more about a lot more about career pivots just because like I'm really personally interested. But I do have some questions prepared today, and I think
Yeah.
maybe one thing that we could move to next is um so you said, like you come from management consulting and then you kind of retrained. And one of the things that like I'm interested in today is the your studies at Harvard,
Mm,
where we met, and also where you have a Master's of Education from an adult development psychology. And I was just curious, how like whether you could share one or two things that you found most insightful, helpful, or surprising. Um, and obviously like some of like probably some of the things you're going to share now also influence the way you work and you work with
mhm.
clients.
Yeah, yeah, happy to. So much to share, but I think one like theory or concept that's useful for me and probably useful for anyone listening is this idea that, so I studied adult development psychology, which means that our psychology continues to evolve throughout adulthood, which like that alone, just knowing that, okay, our psychology, the way that we make meaning. So essentially I would define psychology as like, how do we make meaning? Period. And
Mhm.
like of the world, of ourselves, like what meaning are we deriving from everything that's happening to us and the context around us, that can change and evolve over our entire lifetimes.
Mhm.
And while there's so much that happens in like early childhood, when our psychology is really being formed and like core beliefs are being embedded, there are still so many possibilities for how we can change and evolve, from our 20s and beyond. And so, I mean, that is like the foundation of the work that I do, is that like you can change. And maybe you can't change all of your biases, but you can become aware of them and you can choose how you respond. And there's a fellow named Bob Keegan, Professor Keegan, who's now a professor emeritus at the Ed School, who in collaboration with other colleagues, really created this theory called constructive developmental theory, which is all about how we make meaning as adults. And then from that, if anyone's listening and like wants to get really academic, there was a tool that was created called immunity to change, which is a way to apply the theory to an individual's psychology. And it's really about uncovering like what are the biggest assumptions that you make about the world around you and about yourself in the world around you. Like it's really a belief is an assumption. It's like, if I do this, then this will happen. Like if I like a negative belief could be like, if I like launch a business, then I will be judged by my peers. And it's like, oh my God, okay, I don't want to be judged by my peers, so I'm not going to launch the
And
business,
never do
right?
it.
Like they're exactly. So there are all of these different beliefs that run under our psychology, and immunity to change is like one way to get at them. But now I'm getting a little bit maybe too detailed. But
No,
yeah.
I think that sounds fantastic. Is that connected? Because you mentioned that before, and I've heard it too. Like the immunity to change sounds, and then the limiting beliefs that what you just said, right? Like that's the key term. Like if anyone has ever heard that before, that's the direction we're going in right now.
Yep. And it really is. There's so many ways to study psychology and beliefs and like goal setting and success and action and behavior. So immunity to change is just one kind of framework that's come from that school of thought. And if you study psychology or behavior change in any other context, you'll come upon really similar theories. So it's just to acknowledge that too. Like if you studied psychology somewhere else, this isn't. I kind of like to like level the playing field too. Like you don't necessarily need to like have this specific theory in your back pocket. Like if you understand psychology, it does translate across everything else.
Yeah. How would that well, maybe. Yeah, I might actually just jump to another question because, like, now that you mentioned limiting beliefs and immunity to change, how tell me whether this is not connected, Julia. So if we have these kind of beliefs, so like in the case of maybe some of my clients, like if I speak up in a meeting or a conference, if I speak English with my colleagues, everyone will think that I'm not an expert anymore because I sound really German or French or Italian. If I struggle to find the right words in that moment, like, all my expertise that I just presented in this conference paper will completely just go down to zero, and everyone will have the impression that I don't know what I'm talking about. Which might be connected in my head, but correct me if
It
I'm
is
wrong. Maybe
very
imposter
much.
syndrome. So like, I'm coming to this conference, and I maybe when I signed up for the conference, I actually thought, well, I kind of do know what I'm talking about. And then you have those moments, you speak to people, you run out of words, and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I here? I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a fraud. So how do you, in coaching practice, like with your clients, how do you walk people through those feelings of like limiting beliefs? And I know this might be a huge question.
No, it's
Self-doubt,
perfect.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, such a great question, and it's 100. It's directly connected. Yeah, you made the connection. So even in what you just said, there were so many beliefs operating, so many assumptions. So for example, like if I speak English with a strong German accent, then people will think I'm not as, I don't know, legitimate or something, or like intelligent or whatever. And so that is an assumption. If I speak in this way, then people will think this thing. The beauty of calling it an assumption is acknowledging that we don't know for sure if that's true, first of all.
Yeah.
It's an assumption, and it is based in fear. And another psychological, lesson to learn is fear is much stronger than any other emotion, and it does come from a survival instinct. So
Okay.
we want to avoid any situation where we feel vulnerable, where we feel fearful, because we don't know what's going to happen. Like if someone judges us, and then, one step beyond that is we don't want to be ostracized, because historically back in the day, if you were not part of the in group, you were part of the out group and you were more vulnerable. So it all does come back to this like root psychology of survival and wanting to be accepted and be part of the in-group. So anyways, so if you feel like you
Belonging,
might be threatened,
basically.
belonging, yes, and having a community and having support and having protection and having resources, like it kind of gets like really basic almost. Like we need resources to survive.
Yeah.
We get resources from the group. Um, and so if we have this fear of, oh, we might be rejected, we might not be good enough, we might not be included in this community of academics or this community of entrepreneurs, this community of software engineers, or like whatever it is, if we fear that we might not be included or accepted, that triggers like this very, very deep subconscious fear. And so being able to acknowledge that, like sometimes information really does help us to make change. So maybe someone hearing that is like, oh, wow. Like, and because we hear that and then we're like, oh, that's probably not going to happen. Like, I won't be like kicked out on the street. Like, I won't be destitute. Like, I'll be fine. Like, maybe I don't, present the paper quite as well, but like, I'll still have my professorship or whatever. So like, first of all, that knowledge can be helpful just to like neutralize a little bit of the fear. If we say, oh, this fear is connected to something that's like, from a long time ago in our psychology that's embedded and it's not going to happen today. And then, so back to your assumptions, like if I speak with a German accent, then people will think this. Acknowledging it. So like, what are the beliefs? What are the limiting beliefs? Like, I really like to get detailed with my clients. Like, what are actually the things that you're worried about? And then how do we go and test them? And you can test them in many ways. You can test them through observation. That's like the easiest way to test them. Like you listen to somebody who speaks with an accent and see what you think about them. Do you think that they're legitimate? Or does it have any impact whatsoever in your perception of them? Do you think that they're more legitimate? Like sometimes I hear someone speak with an accent and for whatever reason, I'm like, wow, you sound really smart. It's just because they have an accent. Or like I know that they're speaking not in their native language. And so I'm like, wow. And I don't actually speak more than one language fluently. As an American, I'm guilty of that. So there could be actually the opposite thing happening. So how do you observe? And then also, how do you personally test? Because really the best way to overturn a limiting belief is through lived experience. And so how can you go into a space and do the thing that you're worried about and then see what the outcome is? Do people actually judge you? What questions do people ask you afterward? What kinds of feedback do you get? And if you can do it in a safe, like if you're preparing for a big conference and you're presenting to hundreds of people, how do you maybe before that happens have like a small gathering where you're also presenting similar information and you can test a similar assumption? And I get a little scientific about it with my clients. I'm like, we're going to design tests and I want them to tell me like how exactly they're testing it, what exactly the limiting belief is that they're testing, and what data are they looking for? Like, what is the actual data that's going to help them understand, like, is my belief true or not? Because our brains, like, we really, in moments of fear, we like look for examples of like, okay, what do I think is actually going to happen? And so if we can give ourselves data that supports us taking the risk, it's more likely that we'll be able to do that from like a regulated nervous system place. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we could talk about this a lot, but hopefully that makes sense in like one example from an academic perspective. Yeah.
100%. And it also, I think it would also make a lot of sense for hopefully a lot of people watching that come from like the academic background, like to have a working hypothesis and then to kind of see, like how can we actually test this and see what the outcome is. And now that you've actually like formulated this explicitly, like that is partly what I do with my clients too. I think just in one-on-one training, like often now that you kind of talked about it, often people tell me I'm really like I can't do small talk in English, or like I'm really I don't think I could speak freely for like more than 5 minutes. And then like one of the first sessions, I asked them about like really simple things just to kind of get the language gears going. And then after a while, often I kind of like look at my phone and I'm like, you do realize you've taught me about like your weekend for like 10 minutes now. And then they go like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, and I haven't helped you much with vocabulary yet, right? And then like those kind of moments accumulated over weeks and months of working together. In many, I mean, most cases, like people just kind of like they get this practical data, what you just talked about, like this kind of Actually, yeah, I have talked to Julia every week, and I have been able to talk about this. And like sometimes we trial run certain situations, and it actually works. And if it doesn't, then I'm there. So that's maybe like how that is connected. It's
Yeah.
fascinating to get like the psychological background to what I'm actually doing.
Yes.
Really nice.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. And I will
All right.
say, can I say one other thing
Yeah,
on
of
that?
course.
So, like, I would say, you work as a coach in a way with your clients. I obviously work as a coach in a way. And one thing about working with a coach or a mentor who like really has awareness of this psychology is you have somebody else there to reflect back to you
Yeah.
what is actually happening. So what you just shared is a perfect example of like the value of a coach because you're able to say, "Hey, do you know we've just been talking for 10 minutes?" Like bringing awareness to the micro changes that are happening because otherwise our brains like short circuit all the time back to worst case scenario. And so if we're not
Hmm.
there, if someone else isn't there who isn't dealing with that fear, who can see really objectively like what's actually happened or happening, and we can share that and reflect that and like bring that into their like subconscious mind,
Hmm.
that's we really need that often. So it can be hard, and I don't want people to be hard on themselves where it's like banging their heads against the wall, like, why can't I do this? Why can't I figure this out? Like, I think coaching is like one. I love that it's becoming more popular because it's showing that people like we need each other. Like we need somebody else outside of ourselves often to
Yeah.
really make strides, kind of like therapy. We're all, I think, getting more comfortable with the idea that, oh, maybe even if I'm really smart and really capable in lots of parts of my life, I might benefit from having somebody else outside of me holding space for this conversation and showing me things that I'm missing. Because we all miss so much, and our brains are just filtering for our dominant narrative. And so it's really a losing battle. If you have a dominant narrative, you're just going
Yeah.
to keep seeing that data. And you kind of need somebody else who isn't operating with that operating system to
Yeah.
come in and have a little bit of a different perspective on you. And that's where so much like transformation can happen in coaching, where the client actually hears the coach talk about them in a way that maybe is unfamiliar. But then when the client takes a step back and says, is that true? And they get to yes, it's like this huge light bulb moment of like,
Yeah.
wow, like I had this whole narrative about my life, about my work, about my value, and at least some of it is not right. And then the question comes, what else might I not know about myself?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of partly, and like you said, like people come to you with career pivots, like they want to change something, and that might be like the kind of the entry point. And I think it's similar, like in my case, like people often come with, language challenges or like just getting back on track with English. But once, as you said, like we work together and often I mirror back to the clients, well, this is actually pretty like, recently someone used the word to coerce someone into doing something. And I was
mm,
like, can
mm,
we just stop a second? Like, this is an amazing word you just used. This is incredibly eloquent. Where did you pick that? Like, this is fantastic. And they were, oh yeah, I just read it somewhere. Like, yeah, but you read it, you used it correctly, and this
mm.
in the right context, in like this is yeah. So then so much more happens and people just I recently had a client and he was approached for like by a publishing house to work on a
Mm.
book, and now he took on
Wow.
like mentoring roles, and it's just like it's almost in German you said like a knot opens, like something happens,
Mhm.
some kind of like I
An
think
unlock.
somewhere like exactly, yeah, something is unlocked, and then he just took off, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I was yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's the magic of coaching and of
Yes.
training and of changing that narrative,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. Let me just quickly have a look. Okay, we don't have any comments yet, but please do
Okay.
feel free. If people are watching and you have like questions about what we're talking about, any kind of definitions, key concepts that you want maybe Julia to define, or any experiences you want to share, please do. All right, so maybe, oh yeah, I think like one thing I do want to ask though, because it's in the title, and we kind of, I think we
Mm.
touched on this, and it might be a good point now. confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe as a result, obviously, like, you know, of maybe a coaching experience that you know, like working with a coach, I mean, or group coaching program, which also might
Mm-hmm.
have very similar effects. Oh, 1 second. No, that one was it. So drawing on which we've done so far, like both your coaching experience, but also the academic training, how would you define confidence?
Mm-hmm.
What's the psychology behind it? And can we learn how to be more confident? I'm just gonna tag this on at the end.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think one misconception we have about confidence is we think it indicates that we know for sure we can do something. Like, oh, a
Mm-hmm.
confident person is confident because they know that they will be successful. They know that they can achieve whatever goal that they set out to reach. They know that they can be published, or they know that they can start a business, or they know that they can negotiate a higher salary. And that's why they're confident. They know that without a doubt, they can do the thing that they want to do. What confidence actually is, and if you talk to people who are confident, typically they'll say, I am willing to try. Where does my confidence
Mm-hmm.
come? My willingness to try.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that whatever the outcome is, that actually doesn't necessarily, that is not what we're looking for to inform our confidence. Confidence comes from trying, and whatever the outcome is, knowing that you'll be okay. That actually the
Mm-hmm.
outcome of that situation doesn't get down to your root of self-worth. In essence,
Mm-hmm.
going back to like what we all really care about is knowing that we're worthy and that we're safe. And
Mm-hmm.
so confidence, I would define it as the willingness to try. And what's the psychology behind it? It's knowing that you're going to be safe, whatever the outcome, whether you're successful or not successful, whatever that means. And
Mm-hmm.
so, to your last question of like, can you grow confidence? The answer is yes, you can. Yay!
Which is,
So
yeah.
if you don't feel confident today, like that's not the end of the world. That's not how you're going to feel forever. And it really comes from trying and seeing the experience again, the collecting of the data, trying
Mm-hmm.
something, and whatever happens, seeing that, oh, I'm okay. Like I tried to pitch myself for that, and like maybe I got the contract, maybe I didn't, but like I'm cool. Like I'm good. Like it wasn't actually going to come at my root of self-worth, whatever the outcome might be. And also typically for anyone who's like worked over years on a goal or over months on a goal, sometimes it feels like nothing's happening initially. And so you have to have that wherewithal to like try and like actually not like, especially in interviews and recruiting processes, like you're going to get rejections. And so
Yeah.
if you get that rejection and you make it mean that you're never going to get a job and you're always going to be rejected, of course that's going to lead, like, why would you want to experience rejection over and over and over again? But if
Mm-hmm.
that rejection isn't actually like you're not making meaning from that other than it didn't work in this moment, but I'm going to try again. And I love the phrase not yet. It hasn't happened
Yeah.
yet. Like yet is like the best word ever.
So powerful.
um, so
Yeah.
powerful. Um, so yeah, the people who are most confident can try and like not have the outcome immediately, and also acknowledge like every time I flex my muscle in this way, even like weight training, I don't know if you work out, but like sometimes I'll be like working out and I'm like, oh, like, is anything even happening? Like, this is hard work. Like, I don't know. Like, you do it for a few weeks and like you don't see anything. And then, like, 2 or 3 months in, like, for me, I have a really heavy dog. He's like 75 pounds. I noticed this past year, like last summer, I couldn't really lift him. I've been weight training. And now I can just like lift him up like a little feather. And I'm like, there are like small ways, like, you don't see the progress. Then all of a sudden, there'll be some outcome, or you'll land a big contract, or whatever might happen. Um, and you're able to see that, okay, actually everything that I've been putting in has led to this outcome. And if you do that enough in your life, like serial entrepreneurs, right? People who start many, many businesses, they get
Mm-hmm.
into a headspace where it's like not about success or failure, because they've done it enough times where like I could succeed, I could fail, but it's like not about that. Like I just need to do it enough and
Mm-hmm.
something will pop off, right? I need to interview enough and one of the jobs will land. I need to write enough papers, one of them will get published. Um, so there's also like the commitment to the process, and that also
Yeah.
leads to confidence on like a more meta level in the like arc of your life, which is a beautiful place to be. If you meet people who are just like so at peace, um, typically those are people who have gone through a lot. Like maybe they've had some big
Mm-hmm.
successes, but they probably have tons of stories about like, I did this and it didn't work and I was like laughed at, or like wanted to crawl into a hole but I didn't, I kept going. So yeah, They're like micro moments
Yeah.
of confidence, but then also like a macro kind of security that you can give yourself over time.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
I think that's incredibly powerful, and it reminds me of an image I saw. I wish I could share this like quickly now, but it's set up. It takes a bit longer. Um, it's a circus artist, I think, like juggling
Okay.
ceramic plates, and
Mm.
you only see in the first image, I think you only see like the front, and it looks incredibly impressive, and you go like, oh my goodness, like they're so talented and maybe so confident doing this.
Hmm.
And then you kind of switch perspectives and you see the back, and like it's the whole way to the stage there is just broken plates, like the whole way back to his
Mm.
dressing room. And
Yeah.
I often, as you just said, like the amount of things that go wrong and you need to try again and again and again, and it's a numbers game, maybe in terms of
Mm-hmm.
publications, in terms of pitching your business, in terms of doing job interviews, things will
Hmm.
go wrong. Like that's kind of like just a statistical thing.
That's
Like
life.
even
That's life.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, like Walt Disney got rejected, I don't know how many times, like for his
Hmm.
movies, and then Oprah Winfrey, I think also, like there are so many stories of people that are now incredibly successful, and they had to try again and again and again,
Yes.
and they probably my theory sometimes is actually because they tried so often, in the end they were like, you know what, 100% this is what I want to do. So
Hmm.
maybe that was like the
Hmm.
magic in the end.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you let go of like success being the thing that you like, that you're obsessed with. Like instead, you're like, I'm going to be diligent in my effort. And also to be diligent, you have to know why you're doing it, which is also why I do the values and the strengths. So with my clients, I never want them to be
Mhm,
pursuing a goal that's just based on getting that goal. Like I want them to know why.
mhm,
Like what is the feeling that's going to come once they have that? Like once they're in that job, once they've launched that business, once they've shut down the business, like whatever decision they're making, what is the feeling that they want to have after that? Not just from the moment, like the dopamine hit of getting the job, because that
yeah,
fades very quickly. But that is
mhm,
oftentimes, again, I work with pretty high achievers who've like historically, hit all of the brand names and all the schools and like they've gotten a lot of the dopamine hits and they're coming to me
mhm.
because they're like, where do I get my next hit? Because they've like done the great
Yeah,
undergrad, done the great postgrad, done the great MBA, done the great, whatever job they got after their elite MBA. And then it kind of at a certain point, like all of those external milestones of success and like indicators of you're doing a good job go away. And then
mhm,
comes a moment in your life where you're like, who am I? How do I make meaning of myself if I don't have like a new thing to tell everyone to get congratulated
yeah,
on? And that is the moment where you have to say, okay, who am I? Like, what do I care about beyond just that dopamine hit? And when you can get there, then you can really design from a totally different place. You can design your life from a totally different place, which is again why it's so exciting to do, because people are like, oh, wow, here's a whole different set of criteria that I didn't even know I actually do really value. So once they have
yeah,
clarity on that, then they can make some different decisions and they're like, oh, I don't have to take this one path that I thought was the only path. And like that's just a great moment in a lifetime where you're like, there's so many different ways I can do this and I'm going to be okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It just rang some bells. Like when I think in the introduction, when I kind of talked a little bit where I come from. Not that I'm up there, probably with like lots of your clients coming like from really big,
No, no.
management positions. But I did, after Oxford, like that was ticked. Like I've always wanted to study in the
Mhm.
UK, and then I went to that place, and then I got admitted to Harvard. And then also, you would know this too, like you write all these papers and then ideally, like you get really good feedback and kind of like, oh yeah, awesome. And then you graduate and you go and start a job. You're like, well, hmm, all right. Like, what do I, and this, like in my case, I was, yeah, I'm just really grateful that I kind of started to go back to teaching and training because I really enjoy working with people. But it did
Mm.
take a little bit of like reflection and reevaluation and,
Yeah.
yeah, to get there. But it kind of just, I was, when you talked about it, I was like, yeah, I do
Mm.
recognize myself in that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Of course. Yeah,
There's
yeah,
so much.
please
I know
do.
we're like probably over time already, but I
No
was just going
worries.
to mention, so I have this group program. It's called Aligned Ambition. And just if anyone's listening and they're feeling like like I am a really ambitious person. Like what you just described reminds me of what the really emphasis is within aligned ambition, which is that you can be a really ambitious person and it can manifest in many different ways. It can manifest in that I'm going to get a degree at Oxford, I'm going to get a degree at Harvard, I'm going to get great feedback. And like that's a beautiful way, but then there's a moment where there isn't the next thing there. And how do you own your ambition? You're like, I am a really driven, hardworking, ambitious person, which for me means that you set big goals for yourself. And you can
Mhm.
take that ambition and you can apply it in a different context of how are you going to look at your life with an ambitious lens without it necessarily like like it's not your ambition is not defined by your external successes. Your ambition is defined by how much is your life looking like the life that you want. And so
Mhm.
you can be ambitious. Yeah. You can be super driven and really hardworking and like a crazy visionary. And you don't have to be like, I don't know, a CEO, or you can be, but what it doesn't have to be the external thing. And so how
Mhm.
do you take that drive? And that's the group, like we're all in there saying like, I'm a really ambitious person, aligned ambition. That's how I've understood myself. I'm at a moment where it doesn't make sense to externalize that necessarily. It could be, but it's also more about redefining what you want your life to look like and then like going after that. Like still using like I'm an incredibly ambitious person too. And like I really want to do my life in exactly how it feels best for me. And that includes like I live in a small mountain town where I can go Nordic skiing every morning in the winter because that's like my favorite thing in the whole wide world. So I'm going to work really hard to make that happen for myself. And that's not
Yeah.
something I'm going to like, post on LinkedIn like I had a great Nordic ski this morning, like everyone cheers. So it's just being able to like own your ambition and apply it in the pursuit of making the life that you really want. And that does take a little bit of a switch if you've historically had that ambition kind of stoked by the external like accolades, which a lot of people do who are ambitious because they're smart and the world rewards that. And then at a certain point, you're
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't know if I want the next reward externally.
Yeah. Just a
Mm,
quick, those people saw like this is happening on LinkedIn, but you
mm,
do have a very active Instagram channel, and if people are interested in
mm.
seeing some skiing content, you do share every now and then.
I do.
Julia does share amazing. I'm just always, I've never, it's just not been the thing. Like I've never gone skiing, but like you do make it
Mm,
look quite, oh my goodness, so picturesque, and yeah, it's you're doing a great job. I think of at least from my perspective of like joining and like showing how a life could look like, that you
mhm.
design on your own terms. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, happy. Yeah, I do on my stories. You can see my dog and my skiing and all my other travels and adventures. Yeah. So LinkedIn
Yeah.
doesn't get quite as much of that.
It's yeah, I think it's kind of it's a thin line, maybe on LinkedIn to kind of add some of the personal bit, but yeah.
Hmm.
And so we do have okay, okay. So we just had one comment on LinkedIn. So Talat says you can learn confidence from your own experience, and the environment plays a big
Hmm.
role too. Yeah, like if you
Hmm.
had like probably, what your like the role your parents play and like how they encourage you or not to pursue your dreams and to go for the career you want to, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And to
Yeah.
that comment, was it Talat? I'm not sure what his name was. I apologize if I
Yep.
mispronounced that. Okay. Um, yeah, environment plays a huge role. And one thing that brought to mind is when people are switching jobs, like if they're really unhappy, not always, but oftentimes their manager, like your manager really informs your quality of life. And so sometimes I say you're not switching jobs, you're switching managers because oftentimes like the content of work could actually be aligned with what you're good at, what you want to do. But if you're not surrounded by people who have a growth mindset, who are oriented to your success, um, if that relationship is not healthy, it can really kind of like poison the water, so to speak. And so I do in general with clients, if they come to me, because some clients come to me and we actually decide, oh, you can actually work in the environment that you're in a different way. And you will have a different experience. Sometimes you don't have to pivot. You're just like, we come and we're like, okay, we can work with this. Other people come and it's like, oh, as soon as you know it's not going to work there, the sooner you can leave, the better. Because the longer you
Mhm.
stay in an environment that's really breaking you down and hurting your confidence, like that is setting you a little bit lower where you have to rebuild it later. And so if I find a client who I'm like, after I learn more about them, I'm like, no, like you don't have the right supports here for you to get into that positive headspace. Like pick yourself up, move yourself into a different environment, because it does play a big role. So I just want to like acknowledge that and validate this comment, that it's not all on the individual. Like just change your mind and like it'll all be good. It's like
Yeah.
acknowledge you have autonomy and you can make a change, especially if you're like, I think that my environment is not set up for my success. And that's a good thing to be able to reflect on and kind of accept and acknowledge, instead of like blaming yourself of like, okay, I just need to figure out how to do this better. Sometimes you just got to like change the room that you're working in,
Yeah. Yeah.
metaphorically. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so glad we kind of like got so much so Tala. Thank you so much for that comment. And yeah, and that's kind of exactly why I wanted you to join me for a LinkedIn Q&A, Julia, because
Mm.
I think there is so much, at least from my perspective, and I know lots of my clients are really interested in this too, like just to be aware of like what's going on and to know like the role that the environment plays, for example, or that like the trial and error that you do. And just also one thing that I was told, action before confidence. Like that's what I
Yes.
take away from like what you said just a few minutes ago as well. Like it's not you feel confident first and then you act, but you
Yeah.
actually you do things, and they kind of accumulate and they build up, and then based on that you kind of like, I do have the data set to support that I do actually own my PhD, and I do know
Hmm.
actually what I'm talking about, even though it
Yes.
might not be my native tongue that I presented in, for example.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, so I think, yeah, we are a bit over time, but I think that should be, we might have time for one last question.
Okay.
So to kind of wrap up today, and if anyone's still with us, fantastic. Please do pop comments in the chat, maybe what you found most helpful, or like what we found most interesting about the conversation today. And maybe, Julia, like one thing you could share at the end, and you've like shared so much valuable like insights and experiences and advice already, but like one kind of magic coaching tool, or like one thing that you share with your clients, small
Mm.
but mighty, that we could implement right away, and maybe like a
Mm.
morning routine, or like some kind of small thing for us to take
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I'm actually going to reiterate something I said earlier, just in case it was missed, because I really think this is the most powerful thing you can start with, which is employing the phrase "not yet."
Hmm.
Anything that you're working on and any way that you want to change in your life, um, starting to tell yourself, "Oh, not yet have I found the job that's going to fulfill me. Not yet have I reached," if you're running a business, like a $10,000 month, whatever that might be. Not yet have I gotten into my dream PhD program. And it just places you back in the process, because our minds like black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, like I do or I do not, I have or I have not.
Hmm.
And what the reality is we're marching along on, like, life just keeps going. Like we're moving all the time. New things are coming into our periphery all the time. And if you're able to say not yet, like not yet have I met my mentor, not yet have I found my business partner, whatever it is, it primes us to be open to it happening. And so our minds,
Hmm.
instead of having our like blinders on like this, and we're only looking for the information that proves that we are or are not, and that's what we really look for. When you say not yet and you program your reticular activating system is the part of our brain that allows information into our brain, with not yet, we are then open to our environment showing us that it is now happening. So I really
Hmm.
think if you can just start using that, or if you can catch yourself when you're being really kind of fatalistic of like, it's not going to happen, I am not this, I am not yet this, and I'm on
Hmm.
my path to becoming this. And then you start looking for the information that shows you that you are making progress. And that goes back into the confidence stack. It goes back into trying and trying and trying, doing the numbers game. Like that really is like the basis for moving forward rather than being stuck. So hopefully whoever's listening, that is helpful.
Wow. Yeah, I would, maybe you could turn this, and this would be, I think, a very like personal exercise probably for many people.
Mm.
But I might actually sit down tomorrow and like write down five statements about myself and my business.
Mm.
Like I cannot do this yet, or I don't have
Mhm.
I don't have this specific part yet. And I think, yeah, fantastic. I think that is like the neuroplasticity I think you referred to earlier, like like things can change, and we can change things. We have the power to, yeah. Oh, Amanda. All right. Yeah. So another comment.
Yes.
One of my colleagues.
Yes, Amanda.
I'm not yet this. Yeah. So I think that's a great way to wrap up today's Q&A, I would think. So Julia, so how can you work with Julia if you're interested? She offers one-on-one coaching and group coaching. Scan the QR code. That's her LinkedIn profile. The website is here as well. I think we've talked about like what you focus on, and if anyone is interested, just reach out. Also, just really quickly, this is my newsletter, News from the Studio, English training and sustainable work routines for academics, knowledge workers. Do scan the QR code if you're interested to sign up. The newsletter is coming up this week, the new edition. Yeah, so that was 2 very quick pitches here. But otherwise, Julia, thank you so much for your time. It was, yeah, I learned a lot. I hope the people watching did too. It will be uploaded to my YouTube channel as well, so if anyone is watching afterwards, so thank you for watching after. And yeah, I know it's the morning in Oregon right now, so I hope you have a wonderful morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah, look forward to continuing the conversation with you and anybody else who wants to reach out to me. I'm here to help.
Awesome. All right. So to everyone in Europe, I hope you have a wonderful day. And let's stay in touch. And the next Q&A is already in the making. So we'll continue this. Bye, everyone.